Hello everybody, my name is Happy and I'd like to welcome you to my history reaction channel. Well, we're back with more Sabaton. This time we're going to do two versions of the same song. The English version, A Lifetime of War, and the Swedish version, I'm going to butcher the name, I apologize for that in advance, En Livstid I Krig. Hope I got that in the ballpark. Sorry to my Swedish friends. I do not know Swedish at all, unfortunately. Anyway, as always, I will include a link to both videos down in the description below. I don't know what this is about, really, other than I believe a couple of the comments that suggested it said something about it relating to the 30 Years' War. If so, I'm very much looking forward to this. I mentioned this in a couple of other videos, especially my one on Alternate History Hub, where he talked about his favorite decades, that are not decades, but centuries that are not talked about, and it includes the 1600s and the early 1700s. And I agree with him 100%. That's one of my favorite eras. I don't think it's talked about enough. And the 30 Years' War is, I don't want to say a highlight of that period, but it is certainly one of the definitive events of that period. And I don't think it gets talked about anywhere near enough. This would be something we talk about all the time. And yet, for whatever reason, we just really don't. So I'm looking forward to see what they're going to talk about here. As always, I will add some history when and where I can, but we'll wait and see what they're talking about before I get too deeply in. Get all settled in here. Nice orchestral.
Two ways to view the world, so similar at times. Two ways to rule the world, to justify their crimes. By kings and queens, young men are sent to die in war. Their propaganda speaks those words been heard before. Two ways to view the world brought Europe down in flames.
Oh yeah.
Two ways to rule, past man gone insane.
Yeah. Also accurate. Oh yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the 30 Years' War. I won't get into a lot of detail, but someday we really, really need to do a deep dive into this period, because this is pivotal in so many ways. It is simultaneously a political war and a religious war. Makes it extremely complicated. It's also, in some ways, a revolution, or a lot of revolution. It is really the death knell of the Holy Roman Empire. It's just chaos. It really is, and it's one of the bloodiest wars in history. Certainly one of the most atrocious wars in history. You take it in its full context, there were just so much slaughter and so many atrocities committed throughout this war, especially against the Germanic peoples in the Holy Roman Empire. It was just horrific. It really was horrific. And it lasted 3 decades. So they're going to be, the people who started this fight and the people who ended, they're going to be different generations. It's just really an amazing period. But like most major conflicts, you can't really point to a single cause. There's political tensions going on anyway throughout this region. The Holy Roman Empire was a mess. There's religious strife between the Protestants and the Catholics. That's causing friction. But what it's kind of like World War I. There's going to be a spark that sets this off. In this case, it's the Bohemians. So the Bohemians are tired of being ruled by the Habsburgs. They want independence. So in Prague, you have defenestration of Prague, as it's called. They basically threw the imperial representatives out the window. And apparently that happened so often that they had to make a name for it, defenestration. It always bothers me that something like that happens often enough. We've got to give it its own name. That leads to a crackdown on Bohemians. Holy Roman Emperor at the time, Charles, I think. I don't remember for sure. My memory on that's a little muddled. But he was not happy about this. He decides to put it down. And what starts as just an attempt to suppress a revolution or an uprising turns into, it just like World War I, it just expands. It turns much more into a religious war, Catholics versus Protestants. Start seeing other states and countries and nations jumping in on this, on whichever side represents their dominant religion. And it just gets chaotic. It's just horrifying. Let's continue. This is great.
From dawn to dawn they're fighting, day will they stand.
Yep.
The fog of war I sleep when armies scorch the land. When all of Europe's burning, what can be done? They've been to war a decade, 2 more to come. Lord,
Oh, yeah.
from home, there was a very speed. Like time at war, has man gone insane? Not you
They did.
will remain. Who'll find a way to live one more day? Through decades of war, it spreads like disease. There's no sign of peace. Religion and greed cause millions to bleed. 3 decades of war.
I like that the Knights are getting down with it. Lightly headbangers.
When they face
Thumbs
death,
up.
they're all alike. No right or wrong, rich or poor. No matter who they serve before, good or bad, they're all the same. Rest side by side now. Has man gone insane? Not you will
Yeah. And yeah, it's religion, it's greed, because a lot of these people, especially later on, as it wears on, a lot of and that's where the atrocities come in, is it really ceases to be about any ideology, or at least except on the surface level. You've got to have your excuse, right? But it really turned into looting, raping, pillaging. It's just really, really, really a horrible situation that just devastates huge swaths of Europe. It's bad. All right. Amazing. All right. We're going to listen to it in the original Swedish next. Before we do, however, I'm going to take a moment and I want to just pull up some stats from war. Be right back. All right. So I did a little fact checking just to make sure that I wasn't totally out of my mind when I was talking about this. And it's pretty much what I thought it would be. When you look at the number of civilian deaths in the 30 Years' War, we are talking about an average of across the entire area that's being affected, which is pretty much most of Europe, but it's pretty much a European thing. We're talking primarily Central Europe and Western Europe. There's some Eastern Europe getting into it as well, but looking primarily Holy Roman Empire, plus France, Spain, a few other states jumping in at various points. We're talking at about 20 to 40% death rate among civilians during this war. And put that in perspective, when we talk about the bloodiest war in history, World War II, to date anyway, we're talking typically in most, across the entire war, we're talking somewhere right around 2 to 3% civilian casualty. Some areas were hit much worse. Some areas had much higher, 10 to 20% civilian deaths. I keep saying casualty, but we're talking specifically about deaths. But across all the countries involved in World War II, we're only looking 2 to 3, maybe as high as 4% civilian casualty. 30 Years' War, again, we're looking at 20 to 40%. So the low end of the 30 Years' War is about the high end of World War II. And some areas, again, there are exceptions in the 30 Years' War as well. Areas like Bohemia, parts of Saxony, and some other areas in the Germanic states suffered 40 to 60% casualty. Others, not as bad. Why the average tends to be 20 to 40%. But put this in perspective, this blows World War II out of the water in terms of civilian deaths among the people participating in or affected directly by the war. And it rivals the Black Death in some. And that's just horrifying. And in the case of the 30 Years' War, you also got to remember, you don't have nuclear bombs devastating entire cities like we do in World War II. You don't have things like the Battle of Britain or bombing to Berlin, where you've got indiscriminate bombing over cities that are causing massive civilian casualties. You don't have that kind of heavy artillery involved, at least not anywhere near the scale that you would in World War II. 30 Years' War, of course, is 1618 on 8, and it is during the age of knights with gunpowder, as was an alternate history hub so colorfully described it. So a lot of this is going to be a lot more up close and personal. And in the case of the 30 Years' War, we're talking primarily about civilian deaths due to famine and plague, disease brought by the war or inflicted by the war. So it's truly a dark period in here. And the truly ironic part about it all is that it starts for political reasons. It quickly becomes a holy war, a religious war between two Christian factions, Protestants and Catholics, all of whom are killing each other in the name of their faith. And that's just, it's not just a huge tragedy, but it's so ironic. A faith that preaches love thy neighbor is responsible for one of the bloodiest wars in history. Just because of religious that are, and they're the same fundamental religion. That's what really throws it off. The Crusades, at least, you can argue that they're two significantly different religions, even though they're Abrahamic. This is very different. Anyway, enough about that. Let's just go ahead and get into the second video before I just ramble on forever. But I just wanted to look at some actual numbers. 4 to 8 million people died in the 30 Years' War just in the Germanic States region, primarily in the Germanic States region, at a time when the population was lower. That just could never have happened. Anyway, on with our show. All right, we're back, and I decided to go with the live version just for a little variety. Here we go.
Helt underbart. Mina vänner, då sjunger vi tillsammans. En livstid!
That's a lot of people. All right, I just got to say that's awesome. I love entertainers that let the audience participate. But I've said this before, because I love history, I tend to get into folk music a lot, and that's something you see a lot in the folk music tradition, is getting audience participation and singing the lyrics and singing along. I love to see that they're doing that too in this case. That's great. Great respect for that. I like the tank.
Och när min tid har runnit ut, vem bryr sig då? Vi kämpar på, får en soldat ett värdigt slut. Och somnar upp, försvinna bort och aldrig vakna. För kriget det kan förgöra en man. Jag ger mitt liv för mitt fosterland. Men vem saknar mig, så se mig som den. En make, en vän, fader och son, som aldrig kommer hem. Men vem sörjer mig, för kriget det kan förgöra en man. Jag ger mitt liv för mitt fosterland. Men vem saknar mig, så se mig som den. En make, en vän, fader och son, som aldrig kommer hem. Men vem sörjer mig?
Well done. All right. Impressive as always. A lot of people in there. All right. Again, I want to thank everybody for putting me on to Sabaton. I appreciate it. And we are working our way through the list of songs that you guys have requested. We'll be back in the fairly near future with another one. Thank you again for joining me. Bye-bye.